Okay, so, hi everyone, yeah, I'm Dawn, and although obviously I've written the book with my colleague, friend Louise, I'm going to be picking three of the strategies that we talk about in the book, just kind of to exemplify what that might mean for the classroom, some activities that you might want to do. Louise is an amazing teacher. I need to big her up. She's absolutely fabulous. We wrote this in lockdown. It was kind of something that kept us going in lockdown. She's a really inspirational teacher, and lots of the good stuff is probably from her. So I thought I'd mention her because obviously it was a joint effort. Okay, so if you've not seen the series before, let's see if I've got to press the right. Oh, hello. Oh. What have I done? Oh, how do I go across? How do I move to next? Oh, sorry, there we go. If you've not read the book before, it's based on these principles for teaching that the original authors, Sean Allison and Andy Tharby, came up with in the original Making Every Lesson Count series. So we decided that we would offer to do the subject-specific one and to look at how you might actually apply these principles of teaching to RE. So the examples that I'm going to give today will come from these chapters along the way. Let me press the right button. Okay, so the first thing that I thought we'd talk about is concept maps. You're going to need a piece of paper and a pen, if you've not already got one, to have a think about how we might use these. Okay, so I'm going to set you a little challenge. I want you to write out those four words, give a bit of space in between, as much space as you can, on a piece of paper. And then what I want you to try to do is to link as many as you can, and then write how they link. A simple word or a couple of words of how they link. Now, this one's a bit difficult, but you can see Jesus' life is in the Bible. So I've linked Jesus in Bible with a line, and then I've said how it links. So have a go with whatever combinations you want to draw a line, and then along the line, just a phrase, a word, a couple of words. How does it link to the other concept? I can see some great examples from the front. Okay, so you have basically started a concept map, okay, where I've given you some important concepts, and because of your subject knowledge, you can start linking them. If we had time and the space, it would be really interesting to see if actually how you'd linked it and what you'd written would be the same, because actually there's different ways that you could express the links between the concepts, and that's part of what you can use as a teaching tool. Actually, what can you come up with that links them? Because there's many different ways that I could have what I could have written there. So a concept map then, as shown in the book, is a way of linking key concepts which basically you wouldn't be able to do unless you had an understanding. None of you sat and went, can you tell me what Jesus is? Can you tell me what the Bible is? Can you tell me what Christian is? Because you've already got an understanding of that concept. You were able to make those links because of your subject knowledge. And that's essentially where we want students to be, right? That they can make these natural links because of their subject knowledge between key concepts. Now, in this one, you can also include images, if you want to help with kind of remembering. But a concept map is essentially linking together ideas. And the reason why I chose kind of those first four words is that I assumed that everybody would know. How confident would you be if I'd given you the first column, or the second column, or the third, or the fourth? So this is proving the point, because I couldn't do it. This is proving the point that you could do it because you understand those concepts that I first gave you. Until a student fully understands the concepts, they're not going to be able to do it themselves. So actually a concept map is a great tool to be able to see whether students really understand what we're teaching them. Okay? You've obviously got a key word, they might know what the key word means by itself, but if they can't make that connection, then actually their understanding might not be as developed. So always think about that, because you might be saying, oh, well, that's easy, that's a link there, but actually students might not be expert in that. And this links in the book. We took this great diagram from ATCRE first, and it actually links to how the brain works and how we learn. I think it's a great sort of analogy between concept maps, because what we did was we took an individual concept and then you started to link it to another concept, and that built up this schema in your head. You know, if I put one of these other words in with three of the Christian words, you would have gone, what? That shouldn't be there, odd one out. But that's because you've got developed schema. You've got a mastery of a subject. So her diagram basically shows that before learning, we've kind of got all of these kind of gaps in our knowledge. We don't know. Then you could argue that one new concept is one word. I might know what the Bible is, okay? But actually, we don't want to just know what the Bible is. We want them to be able to make connections. And in terms of how the brain works as well, we develop a schema, our kind of big picture in our heads of knowledge, as soon as we start making connections between. Now, you, as experts, teachers, you have mastery in Christianity, okay, because you're teaching it. But remember, the students might not. So actually, this is almost like a diagram of how we can teach. We can introduce a very simple concept, but to help the students understand its idea in the big picture of the religion, we need to get them to be able to link and understand how that works. So she also uses another diagram, sorry I keep going the wrong way, on her website, which I think is a great example of if I asked you to do the Hinduism words or the Sikhism words, you're a master at the Christianity, but suddenly, as soon as I give you a religion that you might not know so well, actually, you're back here. You're a novice. You're at the beginning. And then I would have had to have gone through maybe and link them for you, help explain. So I see this as our job for students to be able to start making those links. But we have to help them by making the links in how we teach. One thing that I often hear teachers say, I basically teach and I kind of mix up the content for the students. And people say to me, oh, but they get really confused because then they say they don't remember if it's in Christianity practices or if it's in Christianity beliefs and teachings. Well, to me, that means that those students have a misunderstanding of the links here. Because it's not that the Bible is in beliefs and teachings and the connection is that Jesus is in practices or whatever. That's the wrong link they're making in the student's head. We should be making links so that their schema overall of the religion, and it doesn't matter which section it asks it, if they understand what those concepts mean, they can answer any question. So my students never say to me, oh, miss, is that a beliefs question or is that a practice? I never actually tell them, it doesn't matter. I teach them Christianity, doing their schema, they read the question, they go, the Trinity. I know what that is, I know what my connections are, I'm going to write about it. So it's a kind of shift from, I teach the exam specification, but I don't teach to the exam that they just think, oh, Bible, that's in beliefs and teachings. How's that ever going to help them? What I want them to be able to do is to kind of make these much more sophisticated conceptual connections between these concepts. So some suggestions of possible activities that you could use this in classroom for. I would suggest that straight away you've got to model this. So the first thing that I got you to do was to have a go, okay? So modelling it for the students. You could do that under, if you've got a visualiser, you could do that obviously on a board, however you want to do it. But I do think they need to either maybe see a completed one first, and then the process of getting there. Because just giving them the words and go for it, they're not going to know. Remember, you're the experts. They wouldn't necessarily be experts in that. So what you could do is, before you're going to teach a new topic, you could already use the concept map to put down what you already know and the connections you already know, and then obviously you can teach the new topic and put it into the concept map. So actually then you are adding and developing their schema. Those links are getting bigger. Their understanding is increasing. You could, if you wanted to, and obviously it depends on your students, just use the visuals. So you know on the picture from the book, it had visuals. Rather than the words, you could just use images. So a picture of a Bible, a picture of Jesus, and then they could label them and connect them if you wanted to, if your students would do well with them. You could just give them a set of keywords, sort of like I did with the extra ones, and say, right, go for it, create a concept map. But you've got to be at the stage where they're towards the mastery, where you think they can do it, because otherwise it's just going to be a list of words and they're going to think, I don't know what I'm doing with them. So obviously the kind of challenge there is them being able to do it. So you could support them by giving them some of the link phrases. So if you have students that might struggle to actually write the links, you give them the set of words, set of link phrases, and say, right, almost like a puzzle, put this together. And if you wanted to stretch them, you could give links that actually could work in more than one place. So actually they're starting to think, where could that go? Oh, but that could also go there. So, for example, a source of wisdom authority for Christians might not only just be the Bible, it might link into another concept that you've put there. So you can kind of make it kind of more simple, or you can develop it as you're going along. One way that I tried in lockdown when we were doing online learning was kind of like an e-version of this. Now this looks a bit mad, so bear with. But, oh, I thought that it had gone a bit wrong. We're like, oh, it's going to go around in circles. I might have to just jump out and go in again. This looks a bit mad at the time, but this was a Google slide or a PowerPoint, doesn't matter. And I gave them the basics up there just to start them off. Again, depends on your students, you might not need to do that, but you could make them slightly different colours so you know the routes. And then I listed all the stuff that I've taught them. And I want them to then put them kind of in a place and then make the concept link. And of course, when they got to, I'm trying to think of one where it repeats. So, talking about bread, for example, they might obviously use bread in the Eucharist, but they might also talk about it in the Bible, Jesus at the Last Supper. So there were some where they had to just make a copy of that text and put it somewhere as well. And the great thing about that is that it makes them think it's not just one place, it's not just one correct place. And they, because it's electronic, they could kind of shuffle it around themselves. And also, it's not come up on this one, it's on the live one. For some students, I gave them the connection boxes as well, so just get a little bit of support there so they can see that. That one's a bit of a mad one because there's loads there, but actually you can narrow it down, and you could obviously just do it on one thing and get them. It was just the kind of the activity of having to move it and to shuffle it around that worked quite well. Okay, so that is concept maps. I thought what we could do is, if we just sort of chunk it as we go along. Are there any thoughts and questions about concept maps? If not, I can carry on. Fab, okay. So, the next idea that I thought that I would share with you, in the book we talk a lot about lenses, and this is more going to focus on disciplinary lenses. Just to credit Jason down there, He did all these fantastic images. He's an RE specialist, so when me and Louise had to meet with him, he totally got what we were talking about, which was fantastic to have an artist that could really understand what we were talking about. So in the book we talk about lenses. We talk about actually two different types of lenses. One's a personal worldview. I'm not going to be talking about that today. I'm going to talk about disciplinary lenses. Now in the book we suggest that RE as a multidisciplinary subject is, we went for 3 lenses. There's loads of reading that we did around this, people's blogs, Richard Quay's chapter in Reforming RE, and we plumped for theology, philosophy and social sciences. However, I've been teaching this term, and how many weeks are we in? 4 weeks. I'm starting to have second thoughts about the theology one as theology. That's for me to process, but I'm wondering whether we need to put one specifically as religious studies and then theology within that. But that's part of my thinking. So what I'm going to do is focus on particularly social sciences lens and think about, well, how could we use this in our classroom? If we're asking students to approach studying a religion using a social sciences lens, what might that look like? In the Ofsted research review, Richard calls this ways of knowing. How do we actually know that this is a thing within religion? And we're going to have a look through a social science lens. Now I had to think about, well, what do we mean by social sciences? And I came up with some of the areas that I thought that would come under. And again, I mean, each of these in themselves is huge, right? But just for this case, I'm going to look at kind of real lived religion, which I guess would come under kind of anthropology, sociology. So for using social science lens, I'm going to take one kind of idea and look through social science lens at it. So I thought, because I think that most Catholic schools use Judaism as their second religion at GCSE, I'd go for Judaism as the example. I don't personally teach this from GCSE, so hopefully I won't make any mistakes. So what I did was just took some examples from the specification. I'm going to say ATCRE. Yes. And just thought, well, actually, if we're looking through a social science lens, what might this mean? And I'm taking social science lens to tell us about the true lived religion. So obviously, the teaching, Jewish teaching, separating milk and meat, and celebrating Shabbat. But actually, what happens? What might we say is a lived religious experience? And I love some data, so off I go onto Google and search some data about the real life lived religion of Judaism. And I found a survey, a UK survey, and 3,736 Jewish people in their households were asked questions about what they actually do. What does this actually mean for them on a daily basis? So you can see here whether they separate meat and milk utensils. Is non-kosher meat bought for the home? Non-kosher meat eaten outside the home? And you can see their responses. Now, of course, we teach students, oh, you know, Jewish people have kosher households. But actually, what's the reality? And this is bringing them to think about diversity. And actually, whilst there's a doctrine, a teaching, a mitzvot in this case, does that mean that all Jews are following that? And this can obviously bring up lots and lots of questions for students to think about and for you to ask them. So I found loads of examples. I love finding these things. I found loads of examples. We're never going to have time. I'll share the PowerPoint, so if you're interested, and the link to the actual paper of the research is there. Same thing about observance of Shabbat. You know, what do people actually do? You know, 66% of people frequently travel on Shabbat. What does this tell us? Why might that be the case? Why, you know, there's so many questions that we can ask here. Okay. Synagogue attendance, you know, does that matter? Why might it be more frequent or less frequent at certain times. So there's loads of data. This is another one from the United States. Again, a big question in itself for students. Why might it be different if you live in the UK compared to the United States? What difference might that make in how people have responded to the question? So this is fascinating about believing in God or not. Well, of course, you teach the students that Jews have a faith in God, right? But actually, the reality is that when they're asked, it might not actually be quite as kind of plain and black and white. And this kind of gives you this idea of diversity, and in this case, it actually kind of breaks it down into Jewish denominations. Oh, last one. Again, very similar thing, keeping kosher and celebrations and synagogue. But this is in 3 different countries. Again, great conversation. Why might it be different in Israel? You know, having lived in Israel, actually, you know, Friday night and Saturday is very different in Israel than it is in my local town, because actually, you know, pretty much everything shuts down. So why might that be very different between Europe, America and Israel? So lots of questions. The other thing I recommend is in the discussion of the paper, the people that carried out the research often kind of talk about it. And if we're going to make, if we're going to hypothesise about, well, why might that be? So, for example, this one, this is about kosher and home. The survey didn't reveal why, but we can hypothesise. So actually, by looking through this social science lens, you're actually getting the students to think like the researchers as well. Why might this be the case? Why might this data, what might it show us, what might it not show us? So actually looking at the commentary as well is also quite useful. And you could give students the commentary and what the researchers have concluded from the data as well, not just the data in itself. So just a quick kind of thinking point on this one. Have a think about what questions would you ask the students to consider about the data. So if you were to plan a lesson, well, I'll go back to one of the data slides in a second. So what would you want to ask the students about the slide for them to be able to analyse it? But equally, you could set them the task to come up with questions about the data themselves. What do we need to ask here about this data? What do we need to question about it? So also, what questions would you like them to come up with? It's sort of the same answer, because obviously these would be the questions that you would want to ask them, but also you want them to give them the opportunity, once you've modelled questioning data, that they might be able to do it themselves. So if I whiz back to, I don't know, that one, what questions would you, just have a go at writing one down, what question would you either ask the students for them to analyse that, or that you would want them to come up with? Just think of a question that you would want them to ask. Anybody want to share a question either that you would ask the students or you would want the students to come up with yourself?
Why is synagogue attendance so low?
Yes. In all cases, yeah. And is that surprising?
Yeah,
Yes.
You know.
especially with Israel being
Yeah.
a Jewish country.
Any other questions you'd ask them?
I was thinking about why so many light candles most Friday nights but wouldn't go to the synagogue, so they're acknowledging it, that it's Friday night and it's special, but they're not actually going there.
Lovely. Yeah.
I think I'd almost be tempted to take a step back at the start and ask them to first of all identify what they noticed about it and then delve into some questions from
Yeah.
there.
Absolutely. What is this telling us, and also what is it not telling us? We can jump to the conclusions, right? Any other points, things you might ask or want them to be able to pick out? It kind of gives them the opportunity for within a religion to see diversity and real lived religion. So if I just go back to where I was, the other thing that I think it's useful for is evaluation questions. I've just taken a couple of AQA ones, and I think that's an OCR one. So obviously they have to, in evaluation questions, look at different points of view. So of course, if you, hopefully I've picked ones which that data sort of could give them opportunity to answer. So the festivals of Judaism have no religious importance today. Well, obviously, if they're looking at the amount of people that are observing the religious festivals and who might go to the synagogue at that time, that gives them some sort of indication. Well, on the one hand, some people might say, some Jews might say, it's very important. However, other Jews might say it's not. So the data almost feeds into giving those diverse views in a 12 mark, in AQA it's 12 mark, OCR 15 mark question, I'm not sure, evaluation. You know, Judaism could not survive without Shabbat. Well, we've just seen that some people, what do we mean by Shabbat here? Do we mean by lighting candles, going to the synagogue? What does that mean? So actually I think the data can just give them a little bit of extra insight into these questions, that there are different alternatives to the statement in themselves. So that is looking through a social science lens. Any thoughts or questions about using that?
Sorry, would
Yeah.
you pause that to the pupils? If you was doing this kind of task, right, doing a lens, would you say we're doing a lens task today, or would you not? Do
Okay,
that?
so I've ummed and ahed about how much we should actually kind of get them into it. You know, at the end of the day, when they leave, I want them to be able to use these skills, but does it really matter if they know, or it's a social science lens or not? And I'm sort of umming and ahhing about it at the moment. You guys have probably much more time with your students than I do. So if you felt that it would be valuable for them, that they could leave, and it would leave them with the tools that, say if it was at GCSE, that they could then be more successful at A level, why not? But actually it's the process. Hey guys, we're looking at some more data today. What did we say about data? What questions do we normally ask? It doesn't necessarily need to be, okay, it's a social science lens. I'm just putting this little icon whenever I'm sort of putting it into our schemes. So some of them will go, oh yeah. I've gone for a colour coding thing as well. But this is early days.
So you just show the magnifying glass, but not like the social science bit.
Yeah, because no, with the social science, so they know. So when, particularly, I'm a fan of data. So particularly when we're looking at the data and the surveys, there'll just be that green social science lens at the top corner. I said, oh look, we're looking at some more data. We said, so
Yeah.
I'm going light touch. I might review it, but we don't have much time. At Key Stage 4, non-GCSE, I see them once a fortnight. You know, by the time they've got in the room and you've said hi, I've not got long with them. So, yeah. Your own context, what you think would work. I'm just trialling it really at the moment. Any other questions? Okay. So the last one then is about questioning. One of the chapters is on questioning. I have to say this is Louise's forte. She's amazing at questioning. I wish I could go into her classroom and watch her because she's so good. She uses whiteboards and just amazing. I'm not that organised. So I've picked on something that I have been doing, did sort of half do last year, before the second lockdown. And one of the things we talk about in the book is about metacognition and getting the students to not just think about the question, you know, whatever it is, but actually questioning the process and reflecting on the process. So I've been looking at the Education Endowment Foundation resources, and they have got a whole report on metacognition, and it rates high in terms of encouraging, helping students to make progress, getting them to think about what they're doing, thinking about their learning. Now, they recommend, we've got these 7 different strands, and I decided last year to focus on the fifth strand, which I've kind of blown up here. And I wanted to think about how getting students to talk between themselves and how I talk to them about the process of their work might help them. Actually going through things. I use a visualiser pretty much every single lesson with them, but actually talking about the process and actually getting them to have to think about it and to verbalise it to somebody else. So obviously that document's easily available online. I've put the link there. And this is important. Dialogue needs to be purposeful with teachers guiding and supporting the conversation. So I wanted to focus on how, for AQA, a 12-mark question, how I could build up to teaching them how to do this over quite a long period of time using metacognition to try to support them along the way. So I came up with a process that looks very complicated, but it's not. I'll go through it. I came up with a process, and essentially this process is a little bit like, you know, if you get a child to learn riding a bike, that, you know, you get one which is fairly low down with stabilisers, and then gradually the stabilisers of how I support them come off. And unfortunately we got to about here, and of course the stabilisers fell off the country, and we went into lockdown. But we got to that point, and it's absolutely fascinating that they're now year 11. I'll talk about what happened last week with them. So in this process, I first of all went through annotating, how to annotate the question. I modelled that. Also how to plan, and we talked about using notes or not using notes, structures, looking at their previous attempt, etc., etc. And each time they did another one, they could have one less of those things helped with. So for the first one, we all annotated together, we all planned together, and then they wrote it. But then I got them to annotate, and then as a pair have this conversation. What have you annotated and why? And what have you written in your annotations? And straight away in that pair, I could hear them going, oh yeah, I forgot that. Oh yeah, why did you put that? And they had a conversation about what they'd done and why. Fed back, and even that, people going, oh yeah, I didn't put that. So it's talking about the process that they've done, and obviously including the subject knowledge, what they should be covering. And for this meant that all students, even those that kind of needed support, they could have a go at it because I'd already modelled it for them, but it got them thinking about what could I be annotating and why. And obviously there's students in the class that come up with things that I haven't come up with. So then obviously I don't visualise, and we all did it together. So the next one, kind of pulling away the stabilisers, ask these questions. Reflecting on their own kind of process once they've done it. Again, telling each other, well, how did it go? Which bits were most difficult? Kind of talking about the process, talking about the content. Again, this is a great one. Do you think that this answer is better than last time, and why? Thinking about what has either made it better or not made it better. And if they can verbalise that, they're a long way to understanding how to do the question, right? Because if they remember that they didn't put a conclusion and they need to put a conclusion, straight away they're processing what they need to do. Keep going. So this is one that I'd marked and given back to them. Green pen is just, you know, like improving it. What do they need to do? But of course I can busily write down what do they need to do. I give whole class feedback. But if they don't understand what I've pointed out, it's pointless. So this is a discussion between them. Tell your partner what you're going to do in green pen. Tell them right now what you are now going to spend 5 minutes doing. So again, that process, just talking about it, kind of adds value, I guess, to what they're doing. And then reflecting, well, this is what I've got to do. What am I going to remember to do next time that's going to make a difference to what I do? And then this was going to be the end, and then we never got there. you know, how's it gone? How's this process gone for you? I did, along the way, at each of the steps, I did actually kind of ask them, metacognition, I said, why do you think I'm asking you to ask each other these questions? And they can see that it helps them to understand, it helps them to process what they're doing. And I think this is kind of really important, that they understand what it is that they have got to focus on themselves. Because, of course, the reality is, in the exam, they can't have their notes as their little stabilisers. They can't have their last exam answer as their stabilisers. They can't have their green pen as their stabilisers. They've just got to go wham in. So we have a 3-year GCSE, we start in year 9. I don't introduce the evaluation questions until year 10, and I'm just thinking about doing it probably after half term for current year 10 going into 11. I want them to not be worrying about this. To be able to answer the 12 markers, they've got to have quite a big schema, because otherwise they're going, I don't know what to put, I don't know what to put. I don't want them in that situation, because I want them to be able to process the 12 mark and not worry about the cognitive load of the content at the same time. So it's kind of, I stagger it out. So my current year 11s obviously did this nearly a year ago. And their mock exams are coming up, so I'm giving them a practice question every week, and last week I gave them a 12-mark question. We have not touched the 12-mark questions since before the summer. So actually this is quite interesting. So I said to them, you've got 5 minutes to look at all your notes and your previous answers on 12-mark questions before we answer it. You know, I don't want to just go in kind of completely fresh. I want them to be able to look at their notes and give them the confidence, because actually the reality is they've probably forgotten a lot. But because this was a long process, it wasn't just, hey, one lesson, how to do a 12-mark question, move on. It was over a period of time, then I think it helped to embed. I noticed at the time, and for the couple that I got to mark on Friday, that my students, who were my lower attaining students, they're getting a really nice structure, and they're remembering how to do things that I'm not convinced in the previous years that my lower attaining students would have been able to do. I think it's particularly advantaged them. It's given them confidence. And I've actually chatted to them and said, how was that? I said, how was it when I got them to do it? And one of my students said, yeah, it's fine. And actually, she had done a basic for and against, with the little strengths and weaknesses in between. They might not have been high quality. And a conclusion. That's exactly what I wanted her to do. That's, you know, that's going to get her half marks. So actually, for her, I think it's been a real help going through the structure, bit by bit by bit, just taking away the stabilisers. Oh, I forgot to say, the last one that I got to do with them, I gave them a choice. I said, you're going to do a 12-mark question. You've got a choice if you want to have in front of you your content notes. So say if it was a 12-mark question on the Trinity, you can either have your content notes with you, or you can have your previous 12-mark answer with you, because of course then it tells you what you forgot to do the time before, or you can have your notes on how to do 12 markers. So it was their choice, and then they had to write at the top which they used, or some of them didn't use any. They just went fresh in and did it without any of their notes. To me, that's differentiation. That's supporting them by their choice. Obviously, they won't have a choice in the mock. So, again, to take those stabilisers away, but it's gradual. I don't want them to panic when they get to the 12 markers. I just want them to go bam, straight in. So that's the process that I've been going through with metacognition. I'm about to start it again with my year 10s, and hopefully we'll get to the end, and hopefully it'll be interesting to see how they get on with that this time. Okay, so that is the final one. I've got a couple of minutes of the 3. So if you have not seen the book, this is the book. It's available from Crown. Crown gave me and Louise these little cards, which are so cute, and I thought at the time, I have no idea what I'm going to do with these. But feel free to take one, because then I won't have so many. Yeah, if you can buy it directly from Crown. If you're happy to buy from Amazon, it's on Amazon. And obviously there's lots more ideas that link to those 6 principles that originally from the series along the way, and more about the other disciplinary lenses, etc., etc. That's Louise on Twitter. That's me on Twitter. Any other questions? Yes. Hello.
So I noticed that you said that you don't actually give them the evaluation question until they're in year 10, until after half term.
Yeah.
How do you ensure that they've got the skills then to answer that question?
To me, a 12-mark question is knowing enough to be able to pull in what you need. So I want to be sure, I don't want to scare them before it's too soon, because that's scary, right? I don't know what to write. So I will only, we actually do it, the first one we do is on the 5 pillars. So we've just taught them about the 5 pillars. I have to say, before that, the example I use is a completely non-religious one. We use evaluation. Snickers is more appropriate for a 5-year-old to eat than a Kit Kat. Because what I want them to do is forget the knowledge, reduce their cognitive load down. What we're actually doing here, we're actually thinking about the merits of a Snicker versus the merits of a Kit Kat. Now, whether we like it or not, this is what the GCSE basically presents, you know, the resurrection is more important than the crucifixion, or whatever it is, that's what it does. So actually want to get them into that. So that reduces the stress, reduces their cognitive load with chocolate, and they all love chocolate. And also, I teach them not to give their own opinion. I'm not interested if you like Snickers, and I'm really not interested if you like Kit Kat. What the question is it good for a 5, or I think a 2-year-old? Well, no, because nuts are going to, you know, get them to choke, and a Kit Kat you can break up and you can wrap up, and it's getting them to actually think about the process beforehand. Then we've done the 5 pillars. We do something like, you know, the Shahada is the most important pillar of Islam. Sorry, we do Islam rather than Judaism at GCSE. So again, I'm reducing their cognitive load for their subject knowledge because we've just taught that, and so it's fresh. And now I'm introducing how to do the skills part, how to do the 12-marker. So it's just making sure, I don't want them to get so stuck that they give up. I want to give them everything, everything, everything. So they want to keep getting back on that bike and then gradually take away the stabilisers. So it's not scary. So far, I think it's been okay.